I have a few repotting projects that I have to get done today. The first one is this beautiful ALOCASIA JACKLYN. I also have a Thai constellation as well as a bird's nest sansevieria. There might be a few other plants, including this squamiferarum, if I have time or if this video is not too long. So I'm going to start off with this one, clean it up, and get it in something a little bit larger. So let's get started. I don't want you guys to be alarmed if you see this pencil today. It is a stand-in for the regular pencil. Just wanted to show this one because this was a gift from some viewers down in the States. They sent me a care package. So this will be the stand-in pencil for today. You can see on the JACKLYN, it has a little bit of a sheen. It's got a little bit of a gloss in certain areas, and that is actually sap from my Mona Lisa lipstick plant up there. It is constantly dripping sap from the flowers. It's had a ton this time, and it has flowered in the past, but it's never had this sap like it has this time. And you can see it drips down on everything. All these plants and this table, it's super sticky. So I'm gonna have to clean this all up. So yeah, that stuff is just super annoying. I have it in the original nursery pot that it came in. It's got some yellowing leaves that definitely needs to be upsized into something larger. It has 3 stems in this pot, so I'm gonna leave it intact for now, but down the road I might do a care video on this and then show you how to propagate it. But let's take it out of the pot and see what the roots look like. What would be really sweet is if when I take this out of the pot, it actually has some corms in the soil. So I'm just squeezing the edge of the pot, and then I'm just gonna pull it out. Okay, yep, those are some pretty nice roots. I even have a little Mona Lisa flower in there. I'll clean it up here in a second, but I just want to have a look at the root system because it's pretty root bound at the bottom here. No corms yet that I can see. So it looks like there's one right here. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Looks like a couple in here as well. 5, maybe 6 of these corms. There's another one on the back side, 7. So it looks like 7 possible corms developing. So once I repot this into some new soil, I'll let these kind of pop out of the soil, and then I will clip them off and propagate them. Now all I'm gonna do is just kind of untangle these encircling roots a little bit, just so they don't continue to encircle the pot. Now for these yellow leaves, I like to just remove them from the stem, so you just pull them off. So this one too, if you can, just give it a light tug, and that is just an easy way to get rid of these leaves. I think this larger one up here is going to be a bit more difficult, but let's see if I can. I don't want to snap the stem, so these ones are a little bit tougher to remove. This one's actually going to be okay. So just peel it along the stem, and then just clean this area up a little bit. If there's some pieces left on the stem, those will just dry up and you can take those off as well. I don't want to damage this spot right here. This little bump along the stem here is where a new growth point is going to grow from. And you can see that's the case right here. Here is a new leaf coming out the side of a previous leaf. So this one I had to cut off because it was damaged. You can see there's a new leaf growing from there. So if you ever have to cut off or cut back an alocasia leaf, just make sure you don't cut this little bump or this little side extension piece, because the new leaf is going to grow from right there. So you can cut just right above it. You can cut that leaf off if it's infected with any bugs or anything like that, or if it's dying. Here is the original pot that it came from. It is a 4-inch plastic nursery pot. Whenever you repot a plant, you want to go one size larger, and I have this 5-inch terracotta pot, but I'm not going to be using this one because I don't want to repot it into terracotta. It'll just dry out way too fast because I have a really well draining soil. So the only other thing that I have on hand is this 6-inch, I don't know if it'll focus there, plastic nursery pot. So it will be a little bit larger than I'd like, but since I have it in that really well draining soil, I'm not too worried about it being overwatered or retaining too much moisture. Now the exciting part of me just dumping in the soil, I'm gonna add a little bit in the bottom here first, just as a little bit of a base, just to size it up properly. I don't want to plant it too deep, so something like that. I am using Promix's tropical plant mix with a lot of orchid bark. So it's probably like a 60-40, so 60% orchid bark, 40% soil, and it's just a really well draining mix. Now I'm going to make sure that this is in the upright position and centered in the pot, and then I'm just going to backfill with a bunch of soil, making sure it doesn't tip over. And hopefully, I guess you can't see me, hopefully we get some corms here soon. So I'd like to make some new plants off of this one. I'm gonna move it over here, get to this side, kind of pack it down lightly. I don't want to push too hard, I don't want to damage those roots. Actually, get more orchid bark in this one. I've been testing the filter tap water that I've been using for my houseplants with this pH solution testing kit, and I've also been adding pH down into the water that I use for my plants, just because I found that the filtered tap water is a little bit too alkaline for most houseplants. They need a range between kind of 6 to 7 for pH, and just filtered tap water is sitting around 8 for the pH level. So it's a little bit too alkaline. I've been adding this pH down. This just brings obviously the pH levels of your watering solution down so that it's in the appropriate ranges. If they are outside, like if it's too acidic or if it's too alkaline, then the plant has trouble uptaking nutrients or all the fertilizer from the soil. So that's why you want it in those ranges, and that's what I've been adding to my filtered tap water. I'm just going to use my little spray bottle contraption here, and I'm just going to lightly spray the top of the soil, and then I will place it back in the location underneath the grow lights just over here. So the next one is this beautiful Monstera Thai constellation. I watered it probably about 4 days ago, and this is still just sopping wet. So I want to take it out of this soil. It's just retaining too much moisture for too long. So I want to take it out and put it in something a little bit chunkier just so it doesn't get root rot. So let's take it out, look at the roots, and see what we're dealing with. Okay, so same thing. I'm just going to squeeze the edge of the pot and I tip it upside down. And yeah, nice roots. Everything looks good, but way too much soil. And this is just, it's retaining too much moisture. And it actually has one of those little seed pods, I think. They're not terrible, but I just don't like when they have those little pods around them, whether it's styrofoam or like that condensed dirt pod. I just like to kind of pick away with my pencil those little soil pods. Sometimes I've even seen them in those small plastic pots, I guess, and then they stick that plastic pot right in the soil, and the roots, they have little slits on the sides, and they actually grow out of the side of the pot, but I just don't like when that stuff is left in there. I don't know if it harms the plant in the long term or if it has any effect on root growth or not. So I just like to remove it. This one's not bad. Some of them are pretty difficult to remove, but this one, it's coming apart quite nice. So it's very easy to remove. So I'm just going to do the best that I can. And it has a really small root system. So nothing large on this, and it had like way too much soil. I'm actually going to downsize this one slightly. I have this clear orchid pot. Looks like it's cracked there, but it's just slightly smaller than the original pot that it came in, just because it has a fairly small root system. I want to keep an eye on it through this clear pot as well. And once it outgrows this, then obviously I'll just upsize it into something a little bit larger. I'm just going to hold this in place, and I'm just going to dump some soil in. And pack it down, filling all those air gaps around the roots with the pencil. Something like that. I'm going to add a little bit more soil into this as well. I don't want it to be so floppy, so I should have maybe planted it a little bit deeper, but that's okay. I'll just put some soil on this side, and then there, pack it down. Normally, after you repot a plant, you give it some water, but I will only water if the plant needs to be watered. So obviously it came from a really soggy soil, so those roots are still gonna be a little bit on the damp side. So I'm probably gonna give it some water maybe in a couple days. I'm just gonna let these roots dry out a little bit, as I don't want there any root rot to start on those roots. So I'm just gonna leave it as is, give it some water in a couple days. I'm gonna take a break from the couple plants that I have left to repot, and I'm gonna show you my beautiful Anthurium magnificum crystallinum cross. Here's the newest leaf. It is absolutely gorgeous. I am going to be placing a pot extender on this portion of the stem. You can see it's getting a little bit tipsy or a little bit floppy here. So normally with an anthurium you can add a support stake or something like that, but I've seen some people on Instagram actually extending the pot or the top of the pot and adding soil in there so that these aerial roots can grow in and the plant continue to grow. I'm gonna see if I can make my own pot extender for this anthurium, but there are much nicer versions, much cleaner, more aesthetically pleasing versions online, so go check it out. But yeah, I'm just gonna kind of fabricate my own. So you just take a plastic nursery pot like this. This one is really flimsy, it's really flexible, so that's why I went with this one. It's much easier to cut. And what I did is I measured the top portion of the stem alongside the pot, and then I just cut a pot, or I cut this one, so that I have a section like this. And then all you do is just wrap it around the stem, placing it on top like that. I added a little piece of tape on the inside just so it remains intact or it stays together. And then I simply add soil into the extender. I'm going to prop this up a little bit more on this side and then pack it down. Getting some of that orchid bark in here as well. Again, I'm just being very careful not to damage the stem and just packing it down. Now all those roots can grow into the new soil and I don't have to upsize the pot or even add a support stake. Now I'm just going to give it some water with my spray bottle and then just place it back in its location here on the plant table. Just water that in. Just helps settle the soil there as well. There, just something like that. It's not the greatest looking, like the ones you can buy online, they're much nicer looking than mine, but for right now I don't have any on hand, and I like to repurpose a lot of things that I have. Like I'm not using this pot, and even when the plant outgrows this little extender, then I can just cut out the bottom of this and I can have another pot extension if needed, because this one is quite a bit larger. So I'm going to keep this one and then reuse it once it outgrows this pot extender. And it goes right here. It gets light from my Soltech Highland track system. It just shines down and it loves this spot. So these leaves are just gorgeous. Now I'm going to pot up this beautiful bird's nest Sansevieria. It's still in the original plastic nursery pot, which I bought it thinking probably about 2 years ago. It did have one plant in it. Now it's got 3, so it has a couple offshoots since owning it. I did have it just placed in this small terracotta, as I like the color contrast between the green and the orange, but I also want it to be in a really well draining soil and a well draining pot. So I'm going to be using that 5-inch terracotta pot for this one, and let's take it out and see. It's super dry, so let's see what we got. So it's not root bound or anything like that. It has actually quite a small root system on it. And when I pot it up in the new soil, or in the new pot, you can see there's quite a bit of room to expand. Typically, these Sansevieria like to be in smaller pots. Whoops, I got soil everywhere. They like to be a little bit more, not necessarily root bound, but just snug in the pot. But this one is growing, it is expanding, and I'm going to place it, like I said, in a really well-draining soil, something that doesn't hold on to moisture for too long. And then this terracotta pot, they're very porous, they're very absorbent, so they will soak up the soil moisture lower in the pot and it'll evaporate it out. So that's why it's good to use terracotta for succulents, cactus, Sansevieria, plants that don't like to sit in soggy soil and they like to remain dry. So now I'm just going to add some soil in the bottom and then add soil around. If you wanted to propagate this, you can just pick away at the soil here and just literally slice this off, this section right here, and you'll have an entirely new plant. And same with this, it just has a little rhizome that sprouts off from the side. You just place a knife in there or pruning shears. See if I can uncover it here a bit where the rhizome is, but might be a little bit difficult to see. But there's a little shoot that comes off from the mother plant or the main stem. Just cut that right there. It has its own root system, so you literally just cut it off and place it in a pot. Normally I'd be using a succulent cactus soil mixture. It's formulated for plants that like to dry out in between waterings, but I don't have any of that on hand right now. So I'm just using what I've been using for the rest of my plants here, but I'm going to be using a bit more of the soil and kind of less of the bark, I guess. You can see there's lots of perlite in this mixture, so I'm not too worried about any soil moisture sticking around in this pot for too long. So I'm just going to add a little bit in the bottom, and then I'm just going to place the plant maybe a little bit more. Just something like that. I don't want to pot it too deep, and then I'm just going to add soil. Actually, just stuff it in around the bottom. It's not going to be pretty, just stuffing it in there, and then I can give it some water. This is absolutely bone dry, so it definitely needs to be watered. It's going to spray off the leaves here as well, just because there's a little bit of soil that's falling into them. So I'm just going to spray that off, just go around the plant, just clean it up a little bit. Probably won't be able to get all the soil out of there, but as much as I can, just spray it off here as well. Giving it some water, and that'll just help settle the soil. This was a little bit floppy, so I'm just going to pack that down and give it a good soaking. Look at how gorgeous this is when it's all cleaned up. I sprayed off the leaves of any dust. The soil is watered. I watered it till it came out the bottom of the drain hole. But this is just absolutely gorgeous. So I think that's going to be pretty much it for this video. If you have any comments or questions, please leave it down below in the comment section. Thanks again for watching my videos, for all the support. I really appreciate it. Take care, everyone.